We're off. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome to my sitting room. As you can see, no false backgrounds, it's a real thing. And I'm going to be swapping a bit on this between you seeing me on camera and my slide, which I'll largely be using through this. But I want to start with a sort of light-hearted comment. A good friend of mine many years ago said, the only person who likes change is a baby with a wet nappy, which is sort of true and sort of isn't. We love change on the whole, but we love change that we have a say in, that we have a choice in. But boy, we've all been hit with this latest development, which is a change forced upon us, and it's not actually terribly comfortable. And we've had to make changes, all of us, big ones. And frankly, we've had to rise to the occasion, which is why I've called this video, this webinar, Rise to the Occasion. And it's extremely timely, really, because go back beyond 8 weeks, we might have been using video a bit for social media or for Zoom calls, but now we're doing everything on video. So it is highly timely. And it's all about being effective on video, whilst not becoming a robot, whilst being a bit more human. Now, for those of you I haven't met yet, and there's quite a few out there, I just thought I'd spend a couple of minutes, literally that, telling you a little bit about me. My name is Michael Trigg. My business is the Presentation Maestro, and my background is 5 years in the army, a couple of years in the city, and 6 years with Procter & Gamble. And for the last 30 years or so, I've been full-time training and developing others. And my speciality is anything to do with oral communication. The sort of people I work with, you can see them there. And there's actually more than 70 clients now. And I'm not doing that to boast or show off. It's just to give you a flavor for the sort of breadth of people I've worked with. But just to give you a bit of faith that what I'm about to share with you works. Two of the clients you see in front of you there, one in facilities management, one in financial services, just those two alone together, once they put into practice what I showed them, they won new business of just under £2 billion. And they were kind enough to say that it was largely down to what I'd shown them. Which actually brings me to a little point here, is that I think what we're about to do, at least scratch the surface of what we're about to do, is the ultimate differentiator between you and someone else. Because why should anybody buy us? Oh, you may be a very nice person, but frankly, what you're offering and what I'm offering is very similar to what a lot of other people offer. And I think the way you connect and engage is the difference that makes the difference. And that's what they found. They were both in extremely competitive industries. There wasn't a card you could pass between them and their competition in terms of price, in terms of sort of people they had working for them, and the sort of clients they had. But this is the thing that made the difference. Yes, I've written 3 books. They're all available on Amazon, and I have a free app which you can download on the Google Play or Apple App Stores. And you'll find a lot in there. I'm not going to waste time now by telling you what's in there, but it's free. There's no sneaky in-app upsells, and it's there for you if you want to use it. And what I'd like to achieve today, really, with you, is to share with you a few thoughts and a few ways of thinking and a few tools about how you can create and deliver a clear message through video with authority and compassion. So basically, you engender more loyalty in your clients and also your people. And I'm going to cover this in 3 parts. First of all, we'll have what you might call a reality check. Is what are people looking for right now? What do they expect right now? Just to make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak. Then after that, secondly, we're going to look at how to come across with a bit more authority and humanity, as opposed to being something of an android, which a lot of people can be on video. And then after that second part, I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to share with you some next steps, should you wish to take this further. Now, I don't know about you, but I hate these sort of sell fests that go on webinars, normally towards the end. And it's not going to happen today. It's not. I'm just going to lay it in front of you if you wish it. But do hang around, because in the third part, we're going to look at nailing your message. And it's a sort of bold phrase, but what has been extraordinary, I've noticed, and all the years I've been doing this, is that most people, and even very, very senior people indeed, do not have a message when they speak to others, physically in person or online. And we're going to make sure that you always have a message. Now, there's not going to be a lot of time to take questions during this webinar. I wish there was, but there won't be. But do store them up and put them in the chat box towards the end. And at the end of the webinar, I will handle as many questions as I can that you throw at me. Do make sure you're hydrated. I mean, I've got a stocking great thing of water here, but it's going to be a warm day, so make sure you have plenty. If you've got kids around, make sure they're outside or playing, or the dogs are outside as well. And have plenty of paper there to make notes on what we're going to be doing. So let's get stuck in. The first part is the so-called reality check. And it beggars the question, you know, what do people want right now? And I think one of the best ways of answering that is turning it around, doing a bit of self-reference and say, actually, what would I want right now? And before you start searching through your memory banks, the answer, I think, is beautiful in its simplicity. It's not just one thing, but this covers them all. Namely, what we've always wanted, but we just don't get very much. And this lockdown has tended to put a spotlight on what we really do want and need and expect. So let me unpack that a little. I think one of the things we really want at the moment, we always wanted, but particularly now, is reassurance. Reassurance from those whom we work with that we're still going to be working with them. Reassurance that one day this will be over, and the lockdown's beginning to ease, as you know. But the government, quite rightly, is very mindful of the second wave, which in 1918 with swine flu, it's the second wave who killed more than the first wave. So they've got to be very careful about that. But we want to be reassured that we're worthwhile, that we still have a job, and that we're still thought of and cared about. I mean, that is fundamental, but how often do we get it? Yeah, I think we've always wanted loyalty from those around us, from those who we work with, and those who supply us. And I may say this phrase more than once, but people are going to remember how they were treated when all this finishes. And I heard a thing on Newsnight about several weeks ago now, about a month ago, a month into the lockdown. And on BBC Newsnight, they were interviewing the chief executive of NatWest. And they had there with them a cafe owner that was still open then, who said, you know, when's the money that the government is promising us going to come? Is it going to come to the banks? You know, I've got suppliers to pay, I've got staff to look after. And her answer was, well, we normally get 5,000 calls a day for this sort of thing, but now we're getting 20,000. So we're training people up to handle it. Well, hello? That was a month after lockdown started, and they were only just thinking of it then. And I think people will remember that, and they will walk. I just had my car break down about a month ago. A turbo went on it. And I got a lovely guy I've just discovered who's like a mobile garage. And he said, yeah, I knew exactly where to get that from, that part. Well, he couldn't because they were closed down. His usual supplier in Birmingham was closed down, wasn't doing anything. And he found one supplier that was open in Scotland who couriered it down and didn't charge anything for the courier, didn't raise his prices, and kept everything efficient and fair. And my mobile garage guy is now going to use him for everything. Just shows how things can change. This is a little thing. I belong to a coaching group, and this came up on their WhatsApp thing yesterday. This is somebody, a small business thing. I've just invoiced a client double what they normally pay me because the extra work I've done over the last 4 weeks. And bless them, they just replied back to say, thank you so much for your professionalism. We really appreciate it. So I think people are going to remember how they were treated during this period. Yeah, Warren Buffett, the sage of Omaha, perhaps the most successful investor of the 20th and 21st century. I love that. Honesty is a very expensive gift. Don't expect it from cheap people. We all want honesty, and we've always wanted it. But I think now we want honesty and transparency like never before. But golly, let's keep a sense of humor too, and a sense of perspective. I think the light touch, a bit of wit, always helps. And one of the sort of networking groups I belong to, and a coaching group, there's quite a lot of fitness fanatics in there, and they're posting all the time of, I've just done my mile in this time, and I'm working up to a 2.5 mile, working up to a 10 mile, and they're posting all their results. I just stuck in there the other day a lovely phrase from Ellen DeGeneres, the American comedian, who said, I've become so distant from the gym, I've started calling it James, which I thought was rather good. And this last one it's really about appreciation. And it's a fundamental human need. And I'm going to unpack that with a real story and some unofficial research I did recently that I'll share with you shortly. So those are some of the things I think we've always wanted and expect now more than ever. And yeah, not to be taken advantage of right now. A very close friend of mine lives in a very smart part of London, Holland Park, and she told me that only 2 weeks into the lockdown, people were going door to door selling coronavirus testing kits that didn't work. They were completely fake. I just think that's bloody awful. And I read about a couple of weeks ago, I think, of a PPE, a mask supplier that were originally charging something like 30p a mask and now charging £3.56, which, again, people remember that sort of thing. Now, this is a lovely phrase. It comes from one of my coaches, Adam Brooks. I said, become the leader you're looking for right now. Now, that could be rather vague, but a couple of things I'd like to unpack from that is to portray confidence. The last 200,000 years or so have shown us a thing or two about mankind and womankind and how they respond and react and behave. And we tend to gravitate towards, we tend to be attracted to, we tend to follow people who display certain leadership characteristics, which include certain purposeful gestures, a deep tonality of voice, and crystal clarity of message, which is why I'd love you to hang around for the third part today, because we'll be looking at that. We also want reassurance and to be inspired, and how not to do it. Personal experience. My eldest nephew is a brand manager for a big international drinks company. And in fact, it's a very famous brand, and I'm sure, unless you're teetotal, you will have drunk it, and especially in the summer. And this company, about a year ago, had a reorganization, restructuring, which big companies are often doing. And their way of doing it was to get most of their workforce into a large auditorium, and they gave them a PowerPoint presentation. And they said, if your name is on the slides, you're part of the new If it's not, I'm afraid you're not. So thank you and goodbye. And that is how they told a good proportion of their workforce that they were surplus to requirements, which I think is extraordinary. So how not to do it. But I'd like now to come back to the subject of appreciation, which leadership is part of, or it's part of leadership. And I conducted, I suppose, some highly unofficial research over the last, 30 years. And in certain programs, it wasn't relevant for every program, but a lot of the programs I ran, particularly around the area of feedback, or giving and receiving feedback, I said to the people on the program, I said, tell me, when was the last time you left work at the end of a day saying to yourself, if I get one more pat on the back, I'm going to resign? If somebody tells me one more time what a great member of the team I am, what fun I am to work with, I'm going to hand them my cards, because I can't take all this place. It's embarrassing. And as you might imagine, the response was pretty well unanimous in every single organization. It was either a, ha, you got to be joking, or I wish, or an uncomfortable sort of shifting in the seat. Same response every time. So I said to them, okay, so we established you don't get it at work, which means you don't give it. But what about when you go home? If I sense the rapport was there in the group, I then go on to this question. I said, well, tell me, when you go back home, when's the last time you said to your husband or your wife or your partner, darling, I think you're amazing. You do all this work behind the scenes where I'm out beavering, and I come back home and there's a glorious smell in the kitchen. You cooked like a dream, and I'm just so lucky, and I love you to bits. And the response is the same. So it's not something we get a lot of, but it's a fundamental human need. And this is the most fantastic opportunity right now to show appreciation, I think, not only to your people, to your clients. And I want to give you this quote from William James, pretty well the father of psychology, well before Freud. And he's put it there in blue and white. It's such an important thing to do, and it's such an easy thing to do, particularly if you're specific when you do it. Raise people specifically. So those are some of the things I think we want and expect, a bit of a reality check. Now I'd like to move on to the second part here of my talk, which is how to come across with a little bit more authority and humanity online. The first thing is, dare I say it, talk to people, talk to them. Now, when Steve Jobs first brought out FaceTime, he said, hell, it's just like, it's like Star Trek. Scotty, beam me up and you can see somebody's face on there. And he was very excited about it. So for those of you that have iPhones, FaceTime is there. But what probably most of us do is use WhatsApp. Now, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but if you have a client's mobile number, you can call them and video call them on WhatsApp. It's less formal than an email or a text or something. It's warmer, and you can get across that warmth to the people who are important to you. LinkedIn as well. I don't know if you've used this, but there are you can send direct voice messages on LinkedIn, I think up to about a minute. But somebody hearing your voice is a lot warmer than just the ordinary text in a message. And you can send little videos on LinkedIn too. We've all been using this God knows how many times for the last 8 weeks. But it's there. There are other ones too. Bigger organizations use Microsoft Teams a lot. It's the same sort of thing. And there's many a slip betwixt cup and lip when you're on videos. You've doubtless experienced, which is part of what this webinar is about. So talk to people. Now, I'd like to do a little thought experiment with you here. If you could put in the chat box the answer to this. If you had, so I better find the chat box. If you had a coach or a boss or a mentor right now, how would they be with you? What would they show or demonstrate as they communicate? I would love you to just bung those down in the chat box if you would. Do put them in now. Empathy, flexibility, resilience from Camellia. Empathy, oh, I love that. Considerate, real listening, compassion, empathy, dialogue, confidence, and humble. Humility there from Janine. Sally Ann would look for confidence, concern, trust, leadership, warmth, trust, supportive. Eye contact, lovely. Thank you, Claire. Sincerity. Absolutely. Expertise and experience, maybe a little tough love. Okay. Reminders. Positive in nature. A couple of you mentioned sincerity there. I'll come out of this for a second just to show you. Clear expectations, communicate direction. Brilliant. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but I'm just going to share, so I can eyeball you for this. Procter & Gamble, who I worked for 6 years, which is an extraordinary organization. And I didn't know how good it was until I left it. And I've since worked with, as you know, for over 70 organizations, and not one of them, frankly, holds a candle to the way P&G looked after their clients and their people. But there was one thing I remember, one glitch, really. It was the Christmas meeting. And our sales director came down from Newcastle, which was head office then. And he was giving his talk. And he said, I'll take my glasses off of this. I can't, it's stay with me forever. He said, and of course, our most important asset are our people. And I thought, really? That wasn't exactly sincerity. But the reason I asked you to do that little thought experiment with me, and thank you so much for putting your comments in the box, is that pretty well everything to do with video and face-to-face communication falls essentially into two baskets. What you say, which is the content, and how you say it, which is the delivery. And I think you'd agree, if you look at most of those comments in the chat box, most of them fall into the how you deliver it. Now, does that mean that you can talk absolute rubbish, but be warm and very good in delivery? No, it doesn't. You need both. But this is the thing a lot of people miss, is they spend ages getting the content absolutely right, but they blow it when it comes to actually engaging with people. So that is why I'm going to look at the how with you right now, and we'll come at the end to a little bit of the what. So first of all, that little speedometer there refers to pace, the speed at which you talk. And as you know, if you're at all nervous, and I get nervous in these things too. I've only done a few webinars and I'm not completely calm, I can tell you right now. But one of the side effects of adrenaline flowing around the system is that it tends to make one gabble. It tends to make one talk rather fast. And you need to be careful of that. But pace is defined as two things. It's a mixture of speed and ideas per minute. And it's very easy to cram a lot of detail into a talk online or a talk face-to-face. So I'd just like you to remind you of this guy, Confucius, who said lots of wonderful things. But one of the things he did say was that I hear, I forget. I see, I remember. I do, I understand. And the trouble with a lot of business communication, business language, is that it is completely devoid of any sensory specific language. There's very few touching, hearing, feeling, smelling words, tasting words in most business communication. It's all been ripped out. And we're human beings before we're human doings. And we need to be communicated with in a way that's human, that's natural. And going back to Confucius again, he said, you know, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember. Now, in your online talks, yes, of course, you can use slides like I am and pictures there. But you can also use it in your speech. And if you use visual analogies, visual metaphors, people tend to retain that. If I can use a very simple one here, often in terms of disasters, you know, there's an oil rig that blows up somewhere, and in the news, often they will say, "Ooh, you know, 60,000 barrels a day pouring into the ocean." Well, okay, factually correct, but do you have any idea what 60,000 barrels a day looks like? Of course you don't. I don't either, nor do most people. But if you did a little research and said something like, imagine the Dome of St. Paul's filling up with oil every day, that's what's coming out of this well. People go, oh, crikey, yeah. They form a picture in their mind. And what can help you do that, once you have your little visual analogy, is to use little phrases like this. Picture this, or just imagine. And then you give them the picture. Now, those are nice, useful phrases, but they actually have a slightly more steely intent. They're what's known as embedded commands. And when you say to your viewer, to your audience, look, just imagine, their brain doesn't have an option. It just opens up and then you slide in the picture. So use more visual analogies in your talk online. Actually, when you're not talking, is one of the most powerful tools you have. I'm exaggerating it there, but very few people pause for long enough. And we need it because we can only take in, the conscious brain can only take in 7 ± 2 bits of information at any one time. The rest is overload. So if you're talking too fast with too much detail, it just goes in there and up there. So we need, as a viewer, as a listener, as a receiver, we need time to go, okay, next. So use pauses like punctuation, because that's all punctuation is. It's pauses written into your script. So a small pause for a comma, bigger pause for a full stop, and an even larger pause between paragraphs. And I'll tell you someone who's actually quite good at this in a bizarre way is, whatever you may think of him politically or as a human being, as a man, is Boris Johnson. He has an extraordinary way of speaking. He's a very good speaker, but you may notice, and you certainly will after this if you listen for it, he pauses in the middle of sentences quite a lot at the most strange places. Talks quite fast a lot of the time, but then he pauses, and actually it's quite effective. He can get away with that. So it just shows you, even if it's in the wrong place, so-called, a pause is quite a useful thing to do. Yes, I'm hitting the language thing again. So much business communication is so dire, frankly, and orally as well as written. And Churchill said a very useful thing, I think it was. He said, use short sentences, short words, and old words. And by old, we mean words that have been around for 40 or 50 years. We roughly know what they mean, or have a rough understanding of what they mean. And we've hijacked the English language so much. I mean, platform. Now, when you were younger, what was a platform? It was probably something a train left from. But now we have media platforms, social media, every sort of platforms and portals. It's pretty common currency. Framework. What the hell is a framework? I remember at the last but one Downing Street briefing, the minister was asked, what are you doing for certain time? Yes, we produced a framework that will guide them. Ugh. If he means guidance, say it. I think one needs to keep one's language down to earth and, like mad, try and avoid professional jargon, because it actually impresses nobody and very few people understand it. Look at the examples there: tight-knit ecosystem, core competencies, shifting paradigms, moving forward. Oh, a client of mine a couple of years ago was talking about a customer-centric delivery framework. You know, answers on a postcard, please. Huh. The more down to earth you keep it, the better it will be. And I want to show one of my masterclass clients about a year ago. And we were talking about this, and she says, yes, I've got a Darren for this. And we went, lovely, what's a Darren? And she said, in my village, I think she was in business development or marketing. And she said, we've got a very good carpenter in my village called Darren. And every time I have a webinar to give or a talk to give, I run it past him, I buy him a couple of beers, and I run it past him first. And his job, he's got only one job, is to tell me any word he doesn't understand. And so I take that feedback and I delete it. And some of you out there will be thinking, oh, yeah, that's all right. But, you know, in my profession, we all understand that they don't. And if I give you one more example, I worked, one of my clients was a medium-sized investment bank, and I worked with one of their fund managers who was brilliant at managing money, but he wasn't so good at expressing it. And about once a quarter in an investment bank, the fund management desks invite the rest of the bank in to listen to them and say, this is our fund, this is what it does, go and sell it to your clients. And as you might imagine, these talks, these presentations are full of the most impenetrable banker's bollocks. I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word. Impenetrable. And they would easily say, well, of course, they all understand this in our day. They don't. And a friend of mine, or an acquaintance of mine in that bank, rang me up the afternoon after my client had given his talk. I couldn't be there myself because I was training elsewhere. But it was just lovely. He said, you'll like this. I was sitting next to the marketing director of the bank, who was a very punchy American lady. And I'm going to quote a verbatim. So there's one rude word in this. So if you don't like it, cover your ears now. But he told me that as we walked out afterwards, she referred to the guy I've been working with, who was talking plain language. And she said to him, do you know, she said, that's the first fucking presentation I've understood in this bank for 3 years. So everybody's at it. And you will stand out a mile if you can use plain down-to-earth language, the sort of language you'd use with your family and your friends. And this sixth thing on here, or maybe seventh, is it's got music on there. It's about the music in your voice, which is your intonation, your tone, your pitch. And it's so easy for it to become extremely flat and boring, particularly if you're looking down. So one of the things that will help, definitely, vary your intonation is not only have the intent to do it, but feel free to use your hands as you speak. Now, I'm not going to play act here. I'm going to be real. I'm going to put my hands that I've been using quite a lot down on the table in front of me. And now I'm going to talk to you. Now, I'm not trying to do anything different, but this is how flatter and duller my voice becomes when I've got my hands restricted. And as soon as I bring them up again, intonation varies. So do feel free to use your hands. It not only helps with the pitch, but it helps fluency of thought and fluency of expression. We're hardwired in our neurology to use our hands to communicate with. And another thing that will help, they're sort of tied together, is the camera eye. Now, let's be honest. This webinar is about being good on video. And most of us are not used to being on video. It's a bizarre thing. It's weird. And it's often very uncomfortable. But what we need to do is to train ourselves, and it just takes practice, that's all, to look directly at the little black dot, in this case on top of my iMac, but it may be on a smartphone or on a laptop lid, but look directly into the dot so people can see that you're looking at them. Now, what most of us do and I fall into this quite a bit too, and I'm desperately today doing my best to look at the camera, is that it's so tempting to come down and look at the screen, where your interlocutor with the person you are talking to or presenting to is. But if you look at the screen, you've broken that vital eye contact. Have you ever noticed that when you're having a WhatsApp call with somebody or a video call, their eyes are very rarely looking at you. They're slightly down or to the side because they're looking at the screen, not the camera. And if you don't look at the camera, it's a bit like having a conversation with you like this, saying, yeah, I'm listening. No, go on, I'm listening. But you're not really. So always look at the camera lens when you're talking on video. And another thing that will help with what we've just looked at, pitch and intonation, is that I've noticed that an awful lot of people have their laptops or whatever they may be using on the desk in front of them, and therefore they will look down. And I was talking to quite a senior guy a couple of days ago who was standing up as he looked right down at this thing, and it just looked weird. So if you can put your laptop or your desktop on a couple of books or a stand or something, so your lens is at eye height, not only will that help you with eye contact, looking at them, but as importantly, it'll help you vary your pitch and intonation. Because we only have to lower the chin about an inch for it to flatten pitch. I mean, listen, I can't hear you, but if you don't mind playing along with me for this, could I encourage you all, please, just to look down right now, look at your thighs, look at the chair you're sitting in, look right down, and I'll do the same thing. And just talk out loud to yourself about, I don't know, what you're cooking for dinner tonight or what you did yesterday, and see where your pitch naturally lies. So have a go at that now. Just look down and talk to your thighs. And you may notice as you do this, that you find the pitch is pretty flat, because that's what normally happens. I can't see you all doing that, unfortunately, because I haven't got my glasses on. But most of you will have found that the pitch is fairly flat. Now, I asked you to exaggerate and look right down at your thighs to make the point. But actually, you only have to lower it an inch, and the same thing happens. So I hope that makes sense. Can you give me a thumbs up so far, if what I'm saying is making sense? Cool beans. And of course, remember to smile. Now, I'm quite a smiley person normally, I think. At least I think I am. But when I look at the videos that I made, a lot of them for my YouTube channel, I think I'm smiling. Then I look at the playback and I look so serious. And I think, Jesus, you po-faced miserable bugger. And I have to make it again. I hope I've been smiling a bit on for you on this webinar. But you have to exaggerate it on video, smile even more than you normally would, because there's just a small representation of you normally on the screen. I mean, I've got a stocking great 27-inch screen in front of me, so I'm probably coming across to you as life-size. But most people will be watching you either on laptops or on tablets or on smartphones. So it's a small representation of you there, a little you. So you need to smile more to put that warmth across, because behavior breeds behavior. And if they look at you smiling at them, it normally sets off endorphins in them and they tend to smile back, and it becomes like a sort of virtuous circle. But if you start and continue po-faced and serious and professional, that's the feeling you're going to get in your clients and your viewers. Hope that makes sense. But you will find you have to smile more than you normally do. Also part of this bit, or authority and warmth, is maybe a little bit about the tech and the setting. Now, the background, I'm not talking about your commercial background, but that's important, but your physical background. Now, there's lots of schools of thought on this. People put forced backgrounds at the back, which is fine. But as you may notice with these false backgrounds, you move a little and it sort of dissolves and looks strange. There's an awful lot of politicians talking at the moment with loads of books behind them. It's entirely up to you. I have chosen to be honest and open. This is where I work. This is my sitting room. I have a desk in my sitting room because I only have a small cottage and there's not enough space for an office. So I work from here. And I know there's too much happening in that corner and maybe in that one. It's distracting. But I thought the balance, the judgment I made is that it's better for me to appear genuine and real rather than try and have a false one. So that's just my take on it. Now, you can invest oodles in all sorts of lighting, and that's your decision. Luckily enough, where I am, I've got windows over to that side, and I do have one light on a stand to this side of me here, so at least both sides of my face are relatively easily lit. But I don't think you'll find you have to go to huge expense for what you need. But one lamp that is quite useful is not surprisingly known as a ring light. And they're about 100 quid, I think, or so on Amazon. But there's also got a rheostat on it. You can adjust the brightness. And that's quite handy. It's quite portable. It's about yay big, but it is quite portable. And that would do you very well, I would imagine. Now, if you are doing a lot of your videos on smartphone, which I happen to do, definitely worth getting a tripod for it so it holds it firm. But linking back to what I said earlier, do remember to look your smartphone in the eye, so to speak. Look at the camera. Make sure you know where it is, and then look at it when you're talking to people, whether it's on a tripod or not. That stands for sound. Funny enough, although we're talking about video here, actually the most important thing on video is the sound. People will put up with all sorts of dodgy backgrounds and rather blurred or grainy video if they can hear you well. And an awful lot of videos, believe it or not, on YouTube are listened to rather than watched. So it's worth getting good sound for your video communications. Now, I'm lucky here. I've got a relatively new desktop, and the microphone on this iMac is pretty good. I've tested it out several times, and I haven't needed to plug one in at the back. But depending on what make of computer you have, it might be worth investigating a separate microphone. This is one I used in the past. It's called a Snowball. They're not very expensive, but that does give you good sound. They're all over Amazon, these sort of things. But if you're using a laptop, which normally don't have very good microphones, or smartphones, some of them got better microphone than others, it's worth maybe investing in a decent microphone. The ones I particularly prefer are the lapel mics, little clip here, and you put it, if you do this sort of thing with your hands, stick your little finger up and your thumb down, roughly from under your chin to where my thumb is touching on my shirt there, that's really where the microphone should be. I personally like the radio mic. It gives you more freedom to walk around and you don't trip over stuff, but they're a bit more expensive. But whatever you go for, a separate microphone is probably the best thing to go for. So that's a little bit about tech and setting without being too technical. Now, I did promise you that I'd let you know a little bit about what I have for you, should you wish to take things further. And I think this is highly timely in so many ways, because we are now communicating on video pretty well all the time. And it's not easy for a lot of people. It's unnatural. It's a very different skill to being face-to-face. And lockdown is going to be eased slightly, but we're going to be social distancing for a long time to come, a long time to come. So it's worth getting good at this. And it's a one-day online intensive masterclass where we go into far more detail than we're going in today about how to do it. And there's the aim. So you can not only retain business, but also attract more. And your people appreciate you even more. And how does it work? Well, this sort of work, I feel that I do, can only really be done well in small groups. Yes, I could have 20 or 30 people on an online program, but I wouldn't be able to give them or you decent feedback and attention. So I'm keeping it to 6. It's a full day, but it works well. And it's highly practical. There's not one word of theory in this at all. It's all been tried and tested. And it's hugely interactive as well, unlike today, I have to say. And you give 2 talks in it. First of all, you send me one and drop it in a Google Drive folder, or even send it to me on WhatsApp so we can use it on the day. So I see what you're like right now. And then after we've covered what we're going to cover on it, then you give a second one to camera and to us all on the masterclass. So you have a before and after. And what sort of things do we cover on this? Well, definitely we look at delivery, because there is many a slip betwixt cup and lip when you're presenting on video. So we help you avoid the traps that are multiple and do more of the right things. We also look at how to build rapport with your viewer, particularly if they're new to you or strange to you, in that first 90 seconds or thereabouts. Because with rapport, you can achieve almost anything. And most people don't do this in a useful way. I'll also give you a structure that is, I mean, structure sounds a very dry word. It sounds all procedural and linear, but this structure is a humdinger. It works every single time, whether it's for a 3-minute talk or for a 40-minute talk. And it ensures that you get your message across every single time. It also ensures that your audience and you know where you are in it. So everybody knows where they are all the time. And it keeps you on-piste. But the juiciest thing of all is what I call the Nirvana map, rather a grand phrase, but I call it that because it is literally the Nirvana of presenting. It's what most people have been looking for years and have been able to find. And very simply, it's a way of installing everything you want to say into your head so that everything comes out in the right order, the right sequence. You forget nothing. And if people take you off at a tangent, you can come straight back and carry on again without having to use notes or slides. It's almost magical. And I've run one of these intensive masterclasses before, and everybody was presenting straight to camera. They weren't looking elsewhere. It was incredibly powerful. And bluntly, it's the essence of the program that these 2 clients won nearly £2 billion worth of new businesses. So this stuff works. And I thought I'd just share these are from about a month ago. I ran the first online masterclass that I'm talking to you about now. And those were 2 of the people that were on it. And both small businesses, like most of us. And those are the sort of things they said. And you can find it if you want to look at it in more detail. You can see it on the latest 2 or 3 recommendations on LinkedIn. So when is it and how much is it? Well, it's on May the 28th. It's 2 weeks from now. And if it overfills, and I'm expecting it to be honest with you, there's only 6 places. There's one after that in a fortnight's time, but we fill this first. And just to put things in perspective, what I would charge a corporate client would be $2,500 a day to work with them, and it's normally 2 days. What I'm asking for this, and there's only 6 places on it, is that. I think you'll agree that won't break the bank. But it will most likely transform the way you communicate on camera, which is the way we're all going at the moment. And there is the URL. It stands for Influencing with Integrity with Michael.co.uk. If you go to that, claim your place, that'd be grand. And I look forward to working with you. Now, do hang around if you will, because what I am doing, I said this isn't a sell-fest, and it's not. But I have, for those of you on the call today, the prices remains the same, but I've got a few bonuses that I'm going to add into that. And I will tell you about that at the end of the day. That is only available for those on this webinar. Okay, so that's what I have to offer you and share with you. Now let's move on to the third and final part, which is nailing your message. And it is extraordinary that, as I mentioned to you, I think earlier on, is that nearly everybody I work with doesn't have a message. Even very senior directors, directors of household name companies, they don't. They have a subject matter, but they don't have a message. So this is about nailing it. First of all, start with a smile. Now, a lot of people start, hello, I'm here to talk about that, I'm here to talk about this, or my name is, which are not wrong, but it's rather nice to seduce people into what you're talking about. So what I'd like to do is to demonstrate this. It's called the funnel, and the funnel leads into the subject you're there to talk about. So if I can manage this, going to the chat box, if any of you'd like to suggest a subject to me, I'll do my very best to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So if anybody would like to put in the chat box a subject, arthritis. Sally Ann's got arthritis. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Most of us are concerned right now about a recent and so far unhealable virus. But I want to talk about something today that causes a lot of pain and agony to an awful lot of people of all ages, not just old people. And that's been around for a long time. And still we haven't found a proper cure to it, but we're doing things about it. And that is arthritis. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. Tim is called Business Coaching Online. Good morning, everybody. Actually, it's good afternoon. If you look at really successful people, like the Richard Bransons of this world, you'll find that most of them, if not all of them, have not one, but 2 or 3 coaches, which might surprise a lot of you because you think these titans of industry don't need a coach, but all of them see the need for it. However, at the moment, it isn't possible to have eyeball and face-to-face, and a remarkably effective way of doing it is to be coached online, which brings me to what I want to talk to you about today, which is business coaching online. BMW M3s. Pete Marshall. Not quite sure if I knew what an M3 is, but I assume it's quite a sexy BMW. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. There comes a certain age with most of us when, normally after your kids have grown up and gone away, when you think, I think I'd like a car that's a bit more fun and a bit more representative of my real character. I've had the 4-wheel drive, I've had the saloon car, but now I want something a bit more fun. And one of the most fun cars, one of the best built and most reliable fun cars around is made by BMW. And in particular, their BMW M3. And that is what I'd like to talk to you about today. Do you get the gist, everybody? Can you just give me a thumbs up if you get the gist of that? It doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be funny, but it's just a way of grabbing people's brains and interest to get to what you want to talk about. It's just a seduction technique, if you like. You're seducing people's brains and ears. But it's different. It has a slight sense of intrigue, and once you practice it 3 or 4 times, you'll have it naturally. So that's the funnel and the subject. Then I think is the time to introduce yourself. People often start off with their name and who they are, etc., either online or face-to-face. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that who gives a diddly at this stage? Because it's not you they come to listen to. It's what you come to say they come to listen to. So I think what you come to say, the subject matter and the funnel, is more important than who you are. And when you do introduce yourself, I keep it very brief. Don't know why I've got 2 slides here. And there's a useful phrase when you do introduce yourself, and I think I used it today, is basically, for those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Michael Trigg. It's slightly more humble than saying, for those of you who don't know me, I'm so-and-so. For those of you I haven't met yet, implies that you're going to make the effort to meet them. So it's slightly more humble, it's slightly less, but those who are on your call, those viewers who know you well, won't mind you saying that. And those who don't know you at all will be rather grateful, I think, that you've acknowledged them and say, yep, I haven't met you yet, but it's implying that I'm going to. So that's what we got to so far. Now, this is the message part, and this is missing in nearly every single presentation I've had to help with. And it's the purpose of it all. It's the aim. In other words, what do you want your viewer to do or think or feel differently as a result of listening to you? And that's the thing you work on first of all, before anything else in your talk. You know the subject of it, but then the next thing after the subject is what I want them to do, think, or feel differently. And if I can demonstrate this with the subjects you've given me so far, arthritis. You could say the purpose of this talk about arthritis this afternoon is to highlight some of the foods and things you consume that are really bad news for joints so that you can avoid them and stay arthritis free for longer. Business coaching online. The purpose of the next 20 minutes is to give you a flavor of what business coaching online is and how it works and some of the results that it gets. So if you were thinking of actually building your business using the best sort of third-party input, you'd consider investigating it. And the BMW M3, and what I'd like to do in the next 20 minutes is to give you a feel for what this car is like, as well as some technical figures and how it performs. So that if you were in the market for a fun, moderately affordable, highly reliable sports car, you might go down to a BMW dealer and have a look at this one. It's always in 2 parts. I want to give you this so that you can do that. And every business presentation should have a name. If you haven't got one, I mean, I'm almost about to say don't bother. That's not quite fair. But it's really good news if you do have one, because then you know where you're going and the audience knows, or your viewers know, what's in it for them. And then having laid out your aim, then you lay out your market stall, which is your agenda. And I'm going to cover this in 3 parts. Firstly, the sort of joints that are affected by arthritis. Secondly, the sort of foods I'd seriously recommend you avoid. And thirdly, some exercises that you can do on a regular basis that will keep your joints supple and arthritis free. That wasn't bad, actually, considering I've never talked about it before. But I chunk whatever you're going to talk about into 3. Why? Because they won't remember more than 3. So I keep it to 3. And I don't think there's a subject on earth you can't chunk into 3. And it's no coincidence. It's Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, or Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Pick almost any religion, they have a Holy Trinity in it. And so it has spiritual connotations, it has psychological connotations, but fundamentally, they won't take away any more than 3. So that is about nailing your message. You welcome them in with a funnel, they know what you're talking about with the subject, I think I can use one, They know who you are, they know what's in it for them, and they know the scope of what you're going to cover with your agenda. I'd say it's probably the most important part of a talk. Prevention rather than cure. If you start well like this, the rest is pretty easy. Grand. Well, that's just taken us almost an hour on the money, on the dot. Practicing what I preach. We covered three things today. First of all, we had a quick reality check. What do people want? What do they expect? What do they need? Secondly, I gave you a few thoughts about how to deliver with a bit more authority and humanity, remaining human as well. And thirdly, we looked at how to nail your message. That's what I wanted to do, to share a few thoughts about how to do that. And I hope I've given you food for thought and, more importantly, things to practice. Just reminding you that what I'm offering is an online intensive masterclass. You've seen 2 testimonials from it already. It works an absolute treat. But what I did promise you was the bonuses available at the moment. What a pompous phrase. For those of you that are on this webinar, this is what you will get as well. First of all, I will send you to the mail a signed copy of my book, Blow Your Own Horn. And you can see how many Amazon reviews it's got. It's really quite a lot. I will personally support you through my app. There is a feature on the app which allows you to send recorded messages back and forth. And so if you want to practice your presentation or your introduction, etc., you can send it to me through the app, and I'll be delighted to respond. You will have lifetime access to my Facebook Masterclass alumni group. And I will send you the recording of the whole day for you to be able to refer back to cover the things you missed. And you get a couple of hotline calls with me. So those of you who want to take action today, that's what you're going to get. So I think this is a good time for me to open it up for any questions you may have. First of all, can I say thank you for coming today? Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. Now I've got the chat box is open, and if you have any questions, let me, oh yes, there's the URL. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Tim. I need to use a different control to unmute myself, or rather stop my video. Now, if any of you want to ask a question, you can either do it in the chat box or unmute yourself, and I'll take it from there. Bless you, Hannah. Not a problem. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Tracy. No, I hate hard sells as well. I can't stand it. What's that thing? Everybody loves to buy, but we hate being sold. Belinda, I've been looking into audio cameras, but is it worth buying one with a microphone? Thank you, Belinda. Well, to be honest with you, I think you have to go and test it out. There's no point in buying one without testing it out, because you can buy it from Amazon. You won't have a chance to. But if you can test it out beforehand, see the quality of it, I would do that. But I've found that a good microphone built by a microphone maker like Sennheiser or whatever performs better than something that's trying to do everything at the same time. Simon, are there any high-profile communicators on the media at the moment who aren't getting it right, and why? Thank you, Simon. Yeah, quite a lot. If you take the government briefings, for example, I mean, some of the politicians are good, some of them are not bloody good. I mean, the business secretary sounds as if he's got a pineapple up somewhere, painful. The 2 civil servants, the chief medical officer, Chris Whitty, and Sir Patrick Vallance on the other side, I think actually they're pretty good. They're quite low key. I wouldn't want to listen to them for half an hour, But for that setting, they're actually perfect. They have a sort of credibility that the politician often seems to lack. But if I could turn that round, Simon, and say a good example of one, it's for those of you who are gardeners, or even if you're not a gardener, do pop into Gardener's World, I think it is. And Monty Don is an absolutely consummate presenter, both in person and on video. He wears his knowledge lightly. He's nearly always smiling. He has a nice voice. Everything varies. He's a perfect example of how to do it well, I think. Pete Marshall, have you got any tips to help you forget that you're on camera, which tends to make me lose my train of thought? Thank you, Pete. That's a good one. To forget you're on camera. To be honest with you, I mean, this is relatively new to me, apart from making my brief videos for YouTube. It's just a bit of practice. And once you get a little bit used to it, because every time we practice something new, we get another sheath of myelin over our neural synapses. And if one does things a lot, those sheaths of myelin solidify quite a lot, which is why habits are so difficult to move, things that we've done an awful long time. I would just get used to practicing, quite honestly, Pete. Yeah. And if you can't do it on a webinar, but if you came on my masterclass, we look at this Nirvana map, that installs everything into your brain. So actually you're looking at the camera all the time, but everything is coming out of here as it should do. And then you can just concentrate on being you, but a slightly more upbeat version of oneself. I hope that answers that one. FIFA, a little. Oh, thank you, Paul. FIFA offer a great little microphone for just £25, but it provides great clarity. Fantastic. Tim, would you recommend any changes to your structure for short social media videos? Yes, I would. Thank you, Tim. If you've only got a short video, like a lot of mine are, on my YouTube channel, if you haven't checked it out, do have a look. No, I don't have a whole agenda. Sometimes I don't even have an aim on there, to be honest with you. I get straight into it because I want it to be brief. But it's useful to have an aim. And sometimes I break my own rules. But I very rarely have an agenda on a brief video for social media when I'm just putting one message across. But I think it's useful to have a funnel into it. It's useful to have a title, and it's useful to have an aim. So yeah. Matt Hancock. Yeah, he is pretty damn good. I think you sounded better. Really? Available on Amazon. Great. Any more questions? Comes to the 28th of May. It's not actually, thank you, Adrian. Michael, Adrian writes, Michael, on your website, I can't see the date 28th of May. It's, if you go up to the top of the website, Adrian, where the tabs are, I think it says online up there, and you put that and down they will fall. But if you go to the booking, if you go to that iwywithmichael.co.uk, that'll take you to a landing page. No, the date isn't on there, but it gives you a choice of two. It gives you May the 28th, and it gives you June, I think, the 11th. So they should be there. If you're having any extra difficulty, send me a text after this. Jane, any tips to stop reflection from glasses? Golly. Do you know what, Jane? I don't. I suffer from this too. I have to wear glasses because I can't read much without them. And I don't. I do my best before going onto this to check. I do a dry run on Zoom when the camera's going to see what the reflection's like. And if I can change lights and things around, I will. But sometimes one just has to live with it. But as you remember, because you came on my physical program, once you use the Nirvana map and install it all in your head, you don't really need to use glasses because it's all in here. And then you can just look at the camera, or physically, as you remember, to look face to face around the room. So having installed what you need to say into your brain with the amoebas, with the Nirvana map, then you have less need of glasses because it's all in there. Not a perfect answer, but I hope it helps. Yeah. Thank you, Richard. Sally Ann, do you have any prompts or words somewhere to remind you? Yes, there are. Thank you, Sally Ann. They're on this amoeba thing, this nirvana map as such. It's a mixture of shapes and colors and keywords, and more importantly, symbols and pictures. So a quick glance at it, literally, just a boom, boom, will give you what you need. There's no sentences written on there. There's very few phrases. It's just keywords and pictures. And those are the prompts you need. So that works brilliantly. If you don't want to come on the masterclass, just get the book, Blow Your Own Horn. I think it's a £10 on Amazon, and it explains it all in there. I hope that answers your question. Adrian, I will get back to you with this afterwards because I've got your mobile. Sally Ann to everyone, where do you stick it? Where do you stick that? Well, funnily enough, I've got one stuck here, just to the left of my camera. But you may have noticed I've hardly used it at all because it's all in here. So that's the thing, Sally Ann. It'll be, once you've created it, and it is a creative act, and it makes all sorts of neural connections when you're making this thing. It's in there, and it's just like you're putting a disc in the side of your brain. So you won't need probably to stick it or have it anywhere because it'll already be in here. But otherwise, you could just have it in front of you and the odd little reference, and then up and you're off again. Because I think the intent is to have eye contact with the lens, therefore your viewer, for about 90–95% of the time. Which means that the other 5 to 10% is just for looking down like that. Boom. So you can stick it anywhere you like, but you probably won't have to refer to it. Thank you, Sally Ann. Okay, well, it's now 12:30. I'll be staying online for a little bit longer. In fact, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask me questions verbally. But thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your presence, and I hope to see some of you on the masterclass. Thank you very much for coming. Let me come out of this share. Pleasure, Tim. Thank you very much indeed. Do anybody want to ask me a question through the microphone? Fine. Okay. Well, a very good afternoon to you all, and I hope to see some of you on the masterclass. Take care for now. Thank you for coming.